Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. Here on American Voices, we celebrate all that this country has to offer. So after hearing about people's life stories, we also want to celebrate the land. So each week we invite authors and artists to talk about a favorite place in the country. This time we hear from Ravi Shankar. He's the author of the memoir Correctional. Here's Ravi Shankar on his favorite sound in America.
Hi, this is Ravi Shankar, and my favorite sound is the swish of a basketball through a hoop. Now, it's a sound that, for me, represents a certain kind of perfection. You don't hear the backboard, you don't hear the rim. It's as if you've taken this perfect shot, and when you hear that swish, which is a sound, it just makes me grin uncontrollably. It's as if some kind of minute perfection has been achieved. And so I would say that's my favorite sound. I'm a soccer player and kind of an amateur basketball player. And when I was living in New York, and I lived on the Upper West Side, and I used to occasionally go down to visit friends at NYU, which is right near the West 4th basketball courts. Very famous. They're kind of in these steel cages, and you have various kinds of people playing. And during 9/11, I went to graduate school, and then I was working at a literary agency, and living in Brooklyn at the time. I was working in Midtown Manhattan. And when the planes hit the Twin Towers, which was a devastating moment in so many ways, because I was a New Yorker, but I felt this double devastation because in the aftermath, all of a sudden, I was painted because of my skin color and my ethnicity as a potential threat. Never mind that someone who's Indian is very different than someone who's Arab. And even if you're Arab, it doesn't mean at all that you're a terrorist. All of those kinds of categories are whitewashed, and there isn't a lot of nuance when it comes to discrimination, I suppose. And so I felt really deeply alienated in the one place I had felt truly at home, New York City, a total melting pot of different cultures, and a place where I really found my voice. I kind of discovered my love of art and literature and culture and music. And then all of a sudden, I remember a police officer tried to confiscate my camera for taking pictures down near the World Trade Center. I had these NYU sorority girls say some ethnic slurs to me. I had someone in New Jersey refuse to pump gas in my car. And these were all things that I was not used to. I, of course, dealt with racism as a young boy growing up in Manassas in Northern Virginia, but it had been many, many years, and I'd felt quite comfortable. So post 9/11, I'm kind of feeling both the devastation of being a New Yorker and the devastation of being Asian American, and all of a sudden conceptualized as some kind of threat, was really hard to deal with. And I think going and playing basketball at West 4th was a cathartic moment for me because, first of all, there were all kinds of people. You had African Americans, you had Hispanic Americans, you had white Americans, and someone like me who's Asian, and we're all playing. And there is something about sport that's the great leveler. You know, if you have a good jump shot, in a lot of ways, it doesn't really matter what you look like or what you do in your life. People want you on their team. And so I found a certain kind of solace, I think, when I would go by West 4th. Certainly, anytime I hit a swish, everyone on my team would be very happy, and I would feel this kind of intense joy at having done something that I wasn't even really sure how I had done it, but, you know, I let the ball fly and whoosh, right through the net. Throughout my life, I've had these kind of experiences with basketball. When I was living in Connecticut, I played at the Jewish Community Center's Veterans League. You didn't have to be Jewish, obviously, to play in the basketball league. And so, you know, it was the Veterans League. So I think you had to be 35 or above. I was actually the MVP of the team. Now, never mind that there was a 70-year-old rabbi on the other team. He was a tenacious defender, but in the championship game, which went into overtime. And I hit the shot to send the game into overtime, almost near half court. And I just cocked my arm back and let it fly. And the ball, I can still see the very slow trajectory of the ball as it kind of went through the air and then swish, dropped in, and everyone around me started cheering, and we went into overtime and ended up winning the championship game. And so I guess I associate the swish with that. And, I have this other moment as well, in my memoir, Correctional, which is about my parents' immigration from South India, but also my own unexpected experiences with the American criminal justice system. I might have been perhaps the first American academic to be promoted to full professor while incarcerated. I was driving on a suspended license very stupidly, and I had to do 90 days at Hartford Correctional Center. It was a really eye-opening experience for me, and especially the men I met who I never would have encountered in my everyday life. And most of the time you're in these dorms devoid of sunlight, devoid of any kind of possibility of rehabilitation, really. But you get an hour or half an hour to be outside. And I would always play basketball. And initially, of course, no one wanted to pick me. I mean, who is this Indian guy? He seems very different than us. But then when I started playing, I was actually pretty good. And after the first few times I played, I was all of a sudden one of the first couple of picks. I still remember, in the kind of ratty basketball nets that they have there, but similarly, hitting a shot, hearing the swish, seeing these men who I was so vastly different from, feeling the sense of camaraderie. It was one of the little brief moments of respite while I was pining away for my loved ones and missing my family and reflecting back on my own bad decisions. I really found that was a way that I was able to integrate into this community of men who improbably really did create, in spite of all of the institutional pressures that conspired otherwise, a kind of community with each other. You would see these tattooed, muscled guys who would be braiding one another's hair or cooking mofongo, this kind of Puerto Rican soul food together. And there was this almost a sense of family that for this brief moment, I was actually accepted into. And I think a large part of that was because I played basketball during rec and I was pretty decent. And people all of a sudden were like, oh, well, we want to find out more about you. And so that's how I was able to kind of get to know these men who shared so many of their intimate stories, their dreams, their lives. And the amazing thing was that I realized these men are not so different than me, even though I have so much more relative privilege than many of them. Many of their circumstances are the same. They want some of the same things. They have children. They want a better life. So somehow basketball has exposed me to a cross-section of humanity that I think I otherwise would not have experienced. And when I think back to all of that sound of the swish comes right back to mind. And I would hit a swish at least once a game, which helped me kind of become part of the guys. During these games, I definitely felt like I belonged. I guess my wish always was that this feeling of belonging could have been more permanent. I feel like in my life, there's always been a kind of provisional sense of belonging, where for a moment, when you're playing basketball, you belong. And maybe for some people who have grown up in the same place all their life, they have a sense of rootedness. But for me, growing up in Northern Virginia, but being Asian American, I never really felt like I belonged. And I've been pretty nomadic in my life. I've had the good fortune to be able to travel the world, and I've lived in a lot of different places. I lived in Australia, I lived in China, I visited India a number of times. And so there is a way in which I carry with me this idea of being a global citizen, but that has not taken away this need to feel part of a community. And whenever that happens, I do feel like I can really fully be myself.
That was Ravi Shankar. He's the author of the memoir, Correctional. Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.